You voted.
I did.
You protested.
Again.
You postcarded.
So many Sundays.
You posted on social media.
Got some likes.
And you're still reeling from all the terrible news.
Yeah, but what else can I do?
I'm Kelly.
I'm Lila.
And we're going to help you figure that out.
Each week, we'll interview people on the front lines of political action about the things they actually did to take action.
What got them started, who helped them along the way, and what they do differently if they had it to do all over again.
And in the process, we'll give you concrete advice about how to take the leap from freaking out on Twitter to making a difference.
Follow What Can I Do wherever you listen to podcasts, or tune in on whatcanidopodcast.com.
When's the last time you didn't feel enough? If you relate to this question, you want to check out our podcast, Authentically Us.
Yes, guys, our podcast, Authentically Us, is where we talk about what it means to be authentic in everything that you do, in every space that you occupy. Tony and I created this podcast to create a space to talk about just who we are, our experiences, and just things that we are going through.
Yes, so come join us with the journey as we figure out what it means to be authentic together.
MSW Media.
News with swearing. Daily beans, daily beans. Daily beans, daily beans.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Beans for Friday, August 4th, 2023. Today we have a very special episode. I am speaking with the host of the Just Ask the Question podcast, a good friend of mine. Please welcome Brian Karem. Hi, Brian.
Hey, good to see you.
It's always a pleasure to see you. I think we first met, I think it was at Mary Trump's book release a few years back.
I believe you are correct, ma'am. I think there are pictures to prove it.
I think there are photos to prove it. And I think you were giving us suggestions about local taverns we could maybe hit up after we all hung out at that amazing get together. It was like one of the first things after emerging from COVID. So it was very nice to meet you. And then thank you for your help with applying to the White House Correspondents Association. I was able to sneak in there. So thank you so much for
there
that.
You go. Now you remember the in crowd, baby.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm in the soup, as you call it.
That's exactly right. It's very soupy down in DC.
It definitely is. Let's talk a little bit about, first of all, I want to talk about the podcast, Just Ask the Question. You've had some amazing guests on recently, and you've got some amazing guests coming up. Talk about why you started that show.
Well, it all started because I wanted to sit down. It began before COVID because I like sitting down and just talking to people over a meal and sitting, So I decided, what a better way to have a conversation than over a meal. Anthony Bourdain taught me that. So I figured, what the hell, I'd try that. And the title of it comes from something that I also learned from Helen Thomas. And one of the first times I was in the White House briefing room, she said, Brian, it doesn't matter what the question is. It doesn't matter what the answer is. It only matters that you get the question out. So just ask the question. That way they cannot deny that it's been asked of them. So that's kind of been my philosophy in that press briefing room since then. And that's why I named the podcast that, and took that attitude to the podcast, and just asking people, just asking them the questions and not worrying too much about the answers, but just getting the questions out there.
Yeah, there is something to be said for just getting the question out into the ethos, as it were. And
there you go.
You continue to do that on a regular basis while you're in that press briefing room, and we all appreciate you for it. That's kind of our job, is to ask these questions. So thank you for that. Give us some examples of some of the questions that you just asked when when you're in that briefing room, and even take it a step further about why it's important to have it asked.
Well, recently I just asked, the president of the United States from the briefing room. I asked Karem. I said, "Can you state categorically that the administration has neither sought nor received favorable treatment from the Department of Justice for any investigation into the president, members of his administration, his family, or in the Donald Trump case. Now, and Karem came out, and it's a very direct question. She gave a very direct answer. We don't do that shit. was basically what she said. But it needed to be asked because there have been all kinds of accusations from a variety of people. And when you let those accusations percolate without having an answer to them, then you are helping the agents of disinformation. The same as on 6 weeks before the election and last presidential election in 2020, I asked Donald Trump, win, lose, or draw, will he accept a peaceful transfer of power? Mm-hmm. And we all saw what the answer was, and we knew about it 6 weeks before. He said that day depends on what the outcome is. In other words, if I win, I'm not going to question it, but if I lose, I will. So, real kind of a turdish answer. So those are two examples in two administrations where you just need to ask questions bluntly and not be too worried about the politics of it, but just to ask them.
And we're going to have some really important opportunities for additional questions that have to be asked of this press secretary and of this administration this week. Now, let me just tell everyone, thanks to the time travel capabilities of podcasting, we're recording this on Sunday, July 30th. It will air on Friday, August 4th. And methinks sometime between now and then, we might get the unsealing of an indictment, or at least a Jack Smith press conference.
Another indictment, you mean?
Yes, pardon me. Another indictment. This would be 3, 4 if you count the superseding indictments down in Miami that just happened last week when we were all eyes on D.C. and Prettyman. What are you expecting this week, and what questions do you have? Are you preparing any questions for this administration?
I don't think the administration is going to speak to what's going on in the DOJ, other than the fact that they're not involved. They won't know ahead of time. They'll find out as we find out, since they have told us that they're not interfering in the DOJ, no matter what the people, that follow Donald Trump want to believe. There's no evidence that they are. So I don't suspect that they'll be answering many questions about the Department of Justice other than to say, let justice run its course. And of course, I feel the same way, innocent until proven guilty. No matter how many number of times you're indicted, it still has to be proven in a court of law. So this is not persecution, but prosecution, and let the chips fall where they may. I don't anticipate there'll be much talk out of the Biden administration about this.
No, and that they've been that way. I mean, early on, yes. Attorney General Merrick Garland reissued the policy that there is a huge, giant firewall between the Department of Justice and the administration, and they have maintained that and have been adamant about it. And I think that's appreciated by many who voted, at least, for this president, because that's the way that it's supposed to be.
It should be appreciated by everyone, not only those who didn't vote for this president or did, but didn't. This is, despite what you've heard otherwise, this isn't the weaponization of the DOJ. It's bringing back some semblance of normalcy to the DOJ.
100%. And let's talk a little bit about the possible implications of this potential indictment, because a lot of experts, talking heads, pundits that we see on the cable news networks and in some independent journalism as well are making sure that we understand the gravity of this particular indictment. Although the documents, the classified documents, mishandling of nuclear secrets, et cetera, is important and is a threat to national security here and abroad, the importance of this particular indictment for American democracy. What are your thoughts on how we make sure that message is crystal clear? Because everyone, I think, is sort of, we used to have the flood the zone with shit fire hose of lies. Now we have the fire hose of justice, and people might be starting to get some justice fatigue up in this place. What are your thoughts?
I haven't gotten any fatigue from justice yet. I've got a fatigue from lack of justice. So I bring it on, baby. I'm out there and loving it. Bring it on. The real fact of the matter is you have two kinds of people in this country. The first believe that Donald Trump is actually an agent of Jesus, and that he's here on earth, an imperfect man being used by a perfect God to spread light justice and happiness to all of us. Now, the rest of us who haven't been ingesting LSD, cocaine, fentanyl, and heroin at an accelerating rate in the last 15 months all know that that's bullshit. The bottom line is this is the Justice Department working, and despite the supporters of the president claiming that if he is indicted, and this particular indictment could mean bad things for Donald, but then he's trying to push, but he knows the real one that's going to get him is in Georgia, because even if he wins, he will have if he wins another term, he will have no ability to pardon himself or to stop the investigation in Georgia. And so this week, that's why you're seeing him challenge the right of the district attorney in Georgia in Fulton County, I believe, to go after him. So at the end of the day, if he's indicted, he and his minions of Satan, minions of Donald, have promised a civil war. And I think that's BS. I don't think that's what you have to be afraid of. They want you to be afraid. That's what a bully does, is make you fearful. We are already a violent nation. We have 2 mass shootings a day. We've averaged 2 mass shootings a day this year. It's not going to get any more violent. They're not going to be a rise of an army against another army. It's not going to be that kind of civil war. What you're seeing, the pushback from Donald and his minions in the states that were formerly part of the Confederacy, let's take Alabama and Florida and Texas, for example. In Texas, they're challenging the federal government's ability to police our international borders, saying that they've got the sovereign right in Texas. They put barriers in our drowning kids and tossing them into razor wire because, they're Christian. Anyway, so that's that's where they're trying to challenge federal government. In Alabama, a very conservative Supreme Court told a very very conservative legislature and state of Alabama that they have to have 2 African-American voting districts. They've denied and decided not to do that. And in Florida, they've decided that the best way to teach about slavery is that it was like a trade school and everybody got a skill and they all went on to greatness. All of these things undermine our society, undermine our culture. That's where the Civil War is, and that's where Donald Trump's minions will try to have their sway, regardless of whether or not he is indicted. And so the indictment should continue because it is a prosecution. It is the right thing to do. And then if Donald Trump can defend himself in court and win, then that's it. It's over with. But I suspect that Donald Trump will not be able to defend himself in court. And I suspect that this time next year, Donald Trump will not be on the ballot because Donald Trump will be fitted for an orange jumpsuit and be placed in Danbury minimum security prison.
Here's hoping from your lips. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the Civil War idea, but I do have to take a quick break. So I need everybody to stick around. We'll be right back.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
The issues of the day are really complicated. Everybody loves a good hot take, but really understanding an issue takes some digging. I'm Asha Rangappa. I teach national security law at Yale University. I'm a former FBI special agent, and I'm a legal and national security analyst.
And I'm Renato Mariotti. I'm a former federal prosecutor, a practicing lawyer, and a legal analyst.
And we're here to help you understand topics that can't be boiled down to a soundbite or a tweet.
Join us each week as we dig deep into pressing legal topics. Listen to It's Complicated anywhere you get your podcasts, and check out our YouTube channel.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. We're talking with the host of the Just Ask the Question podcast, Brian Karem. Brian, you mentioned this Civil War if there's an indictment. We're going to fight back. I'm being indicted for you. And these veiled calls.
Yes, he's such a martyr. That little piece of shit.
Thinly veiled calls for violence. And I think that it's not going to... I mean, we saw the indictment and arraignment in New York. We saw the indictment in Miami. And like 20 chuds with flags showed up and and they're like super prepared for this. But I also think that some of the credit goes to the Department of Justice, the part of the Department of Justice that has been arresting and prosecuting and convicting and jailing the boots on the ground rioters from January 6th. I think that is acting as quite the deterrent for mobs of people to show up. I mean, we still can't do anything about these lone wolf domestic stochastic terrorists, but I think that might be part of the reason we aren't seeing these massive crowds show up to anything that Donald Trump is doing.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, I'm there for you, Mr. President. I'm not there. I'm not there for you. You're going to jail. And so that's like you should have known on that day on January 6th when he said, I'll march up the hill with you. I'm going bigly. And he didn't. He didn't march up the hill. He didn't go anywhere. He went home and watched it on TV. And all his people marched up the hill and got arrested. So again, Donald Trump uses people. And so, yeah, that it's the prospect of spending 48 months in a high security federal prison is usually deterrent enough to keep large crowds of people from rioting. That does help quite a bit. You are correct.
I think so.
Ding, ding.
Yep, and they've thrown up the barriers down there in Georgia. You brought up Georgia. That's the one that's going to be the worst for him. You said even if he wins election, he won't be able to shut that down or pardon himself. But it's also true if any Republican who is thinking about pardoning him wins the office. Georgia is unpardonable by a president of the United States and actually by the governor of that state itself. They have a pardon board.
They have a pardon board. Yeah. So that would be they're shit out of luck there, pal. That's so his only play is to try and keep it from happening, from the indictment from happening. And that's not going to happen. And then once he is indicted, I suspect he's going to be, the plea deal. I understand he has some new attorneys now and they got paid up front, and God bless them because Donald Trump never pays a bill. So if they got paid up front, I hope they got paid a lot because they're going to need it.
Let's game this scenario out. If the Department of Justice goes first with coup indictments, which I think they will.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this Friday, may have already. If they go first, if they go before Fani Willis, those indictments could give the DA down in Georgia some predicate crimes, underlying crimes for a RICO statute.
Well, they are pursuing a RICO. Yes, you're correct.
And I think that then we will see Donald Trump try to, he will file a motion to move the DA's case out of state court and into federal court because some of the predicate underlying RICO crimes are federal crimes. He tried this in Manhattan because one of the underlying crimes that elevated the falsification of business felonies to felony status from misdemeanor status, one of them was a federal crime, and that just got tossed out immediately. But I don't know who might hear the motion down in Georgia to move it to a federal court or if it would be a federal judge. But I'm sure he will try to do that, and that will also cause delay. But I don't think, his 2024 court dance card is getting pretty full. We might not even see this RICO case go to trial until after the election.
Well, he's got some time open right now in July and August of next year, but from October through May or June, yeah.
And possibly March, because Alvin Bragg has signaled wildly, like he's like doing the Team America World Police signal, like, hey, I'll move my shit later if DOJ wants to go for it. I'm all about justice. So we could see that January 6th case from DOJ go as early as March.
We could see a variety of things, but I guarantee you we're going to see is Donald Trump, even if he lives to be 200, as Dr. Ronnie Jackson predicted in a briefing I attended many years ago and laughed and vomited when I heard it. Even if he does live to be 200, Donald Trump will spend the rest of his life in court defending this crap. And remember, folks, it's all Donnie's fault. Donnie did this to himself, especially in the Mar-a-Lago case. Everybody going, well, everybody else has them and had these classified documents. Only Donnie is being prosecuted for it. That's why it's persecution. No, the reason why Donnie is being prosecuted for it is because Donnie didn't give them back. And everybody else gave them back when asked.
And then lied, and then hid them, and then tried to destroy the evidence, and then tried again to destroy the evidence.
As I said, so the documents he first claimed he didn't have, then said the FBI planted, then claimed he had every right to keep, because he performed a mind meld and declassified them in his heart. had to be protected by getting rid of the security camera footage, which shows people moving them around after he ordered them to be done. So yeah, it's all his fault. I mean, and everyone testifying against him, it's all Republicans. It's all people that worked for him. This is all self-inflicted because Donald Trump is an idiot. And he's, skated by because, they always complain about a two-tier justice system in this country, or he likes to claim there isn't. And he's right, there is, but he's not on the lower tier. If this were anybody else being investigated, this SOB would be rotting behind bars right now, waiting for a trial. But because he's Donnie, he's not. So it's, I find everything that he says to be loathsome, untrue, and without a doubt, just another grift.
And we may even see more superseding indictments in Miami because we know that a low-level Trump Organization employee got a target letter recently, and that low-level Trump Organization employee was represented by Stanley Woodward. But this superseding indictment that added De Oliveira as a defendant, that guy's not repped by Stanley Woodward. That guy is repped by a guy named John Irving, unless he has switched lawyers somewhere, and that just hasn't been publicly reported, or I have missed it somewhere along the way. But we could see additional superseding indictments because in this superseding indictment, there's a description of De Oliveira and Nauta like crawling through bushes and trying not to get on the property and going down tunnels with flashlights. There might be more. So they might have gotten them looking directly at a flashlight at a surveillance camera. And then they might have, I don't know, maybe tried to drain the pool into the server room to get rid of that surveillance footage. It's like obstruction inception, as we call it on the most recent episode of the Jack podcast. So there could even be more indictments coming down the road.
Well, that there is the potential for more indictments because guess what? The grand jury that's heard all of this has not been dismissed. It's still there.
Nope. And you can't have it. You can't have a grand jury go on for no reason. You have to be looking for charges.
There has to be something that they're pursuing. So it's the grand jury doesn't just walk in and go, "Hey, fellers, what do you got for me today?" No, there's they have something they're pursuing, and the grand jury is looking into it. So when that grand jury finally dissolves, then we'll know that perhaps all the charges are over with. But until then, yeah, you could expect some more charges.
And we know on Truth Social, Trump is saying, "I handed them over. We did not delete. We didn't delete. We didn't destroy anything." That means that they totally did. But that's not charged in this most recent superseding indictment. Only the attempt to destroy that evidence is charged, not the actual destruction of the evidence. And that might have something to do with what they're still looking into, this grand jury.
Well, and I'd be interested in knowing if there's going to be a search at Bedminster at some point in time, because it's been mentioned in a couple of the pleadings and in some of the stuff in the court that, stuff was taken to Bedminster. So at some point in time, that may, he may further that investigation. I've even heard speculation that the reason why they came out with all that stuff with UAPs in the last week is trying to get ahead of the fact that Trump probably had some of that shit in the classified documents that he kept. And they just want to, before anything else happens, they want to get in front of it, just if for nothing else, so the Republicans can come out against illegal aliens from the planet Zod, and they'll put sky walls up to keep out the illegal aliens.
Mm. Yeah, they'll do some barriers and concertina wire.
Yeah.
It's kind of stunning, the amount of criminal accountability that's coming down the pipe.
Is it though, Allison? Is it stunning? Is it really? Because I covered this guy for 4 years.
Well, in a world where we've been waiting for it for 7 years.
Oh.
Yeah. It's like that GIF of the woman with all the hot dogs hitting her face. Like, yes. bring me all the justice all at once.
I'm not really stunned though. I mean, I would have liked it to have occurred a little quicker, but particularly before the election. But the fact that the indictments are coming, and the more they come, the more it just looks like what they haven't. Remember, we're only seeing enough to indict. We're not seeing enough. There'll be other stuff in court, and you're going to go, "Holy shit!" And so, many of our legislators in Congress are lawyers and have a rudimentary understanding of the law. And at some point in time, as this stuff unravels, even those closest to Donald will and have already privately begun to go, holy shit, but publicly they will because they just won't be able to avoid it.
Yeah, and it'll be like dominoes. Once the bigger voices come out, that they'll provide cover for others. It'll be interesting to see what the off-ramp finally is. I've long said there's really nothing this man can do to get the tribe to denounce him until we're just close to an election and he's lost the last 8 million of them and he's just bad to have, as the leader of your party, and they're tired of losing. It might just be the time. It might be like, all right, it's time. It's 2024. It's time to get off this ride.
I predict that the ones that won't will be the Christians who will follow their false messiah into the depths of hell. But other than that, I think most people will at one point in time go, whoa. Oh, well, that's a little much for even me. That's
yeah. And they'll just use it to provide cover. Their real reason being they're tired of losing.
Yeah.
But they're like the rest of the candidates so far aren't any much more appealing. So we'll see what happens if like a Brian Kemp jumps in the race or something.
No, I'll tell you what the real fear is. And I've said this often, and it's the one I think the Democrats had better look at. If a lane opens up where Donald Trump isn't in, there is one candidate who has crossover appeal to the Democrats. And if this candidate is on the top of the ticket on the Republican Party, would present a very, very strong challenge to the sitting president, and that's Liz Cheney.
That's what I was thinking.
And if she could not get out of a Republican primary, but remember at the same time, the Republicans actually have control over who they nominate. They don't have to nominate if you've got all the, the delegates and everything on your side. The Republican Party, the Central Committee of the Republican Party holds on to that power to be able to nominate whomever they want. And the Republicans love, among more than anything else, they love to win. And so if they see that she would, there are a lot of Democrats who love her and think of her as a hero because of what she did on January 6th. I remind everyone that she voted with Donald Trump 95% of the time. She is not a hero. The only thing she did was her civic duty in pushing back against, Donald Trump for being a seditious ass clown. Mazel tov for that. But if she's on the ticket, at the top of the ticket, the Republican Party, the Republicans would then, if she won, have the bragging rights of saying we were the party that got the first female president. And that will crush the Democrats. That's a very serious threat.
We also lose the battle to save democracy argument.
Oh, well, yes.
we pivot back to other very strong arguments, including healthcare and Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, pro-choice, anti-Dobbs, Supreme Court reform. But it does take away the democracy discussion. I mean, not in my eyes, but in the eyes of a lot of folks.
Yeah, without a doubt. So that's the big fear. I mean, everybody else, who the hell? I mean, do any of these clowns in the Republican Party really have a chance of winning an election? Donald Trump doesn't even really have that. I mean, they all play to they're going as far right as they can. That lane is so crowded. And that's because where the money is, and they've taken the Republican Party so far over there that even conservatives who are very conservative going, I ain't going that far. And so that's, at the end of the day, crossover appeal in order to win an election is not possible. The only thing that is possible from that side of the aisle is if they mobilize their forces, they're a minority, if they mobilize their voters, right, and everyone else isn't mobilized to vote, that's the only way they win.
Yeah, and it's still a challenge because if it's a Liz Cheney, she's going to immediately lose the Trump base, which is about 22%.
But will she? She'll lose some of them, but she won't lose. There will be those who are not the born-again Christians, not the evangelicals, who are Trump supporters, who might still stay with her.
It is their best chance, regardless of how we break it down. Well, tell us, before I let you go, who's coming up on Just Ask the Question and where they can find and follow you.
Norm Eisen will be with us. We also have Hal Sparks coming up soon, comedian. And I forgot who else I have on tap.
Well, that Norm Eisen interview is going to be huge because he's one of the people who penned the model prosecution memo that we're looking at for the indictments that are coming out.
And we discussed that a lot in the Norm interview, and of course, oh hell, I can't even remember who else is coming up, but really big people. It's Just Ask the Question. That's the name of the podcast. Wherever fine podcasts are sold. The name of the book is Free the Press, wherever fine books are sold, and you get that online. And then a column every week and you'll see me in the White House briefing room, but a column every week on salon.com about this wonderful world we call Washington, D.C., and as I like to call it, the soup.
The soup. And who's your favorite press secretary so far?
Oh, that's still, out of all the ones I've had, it's Mike McCurry, without a doubt. Gotcha. Simply the best. And I'll tell you, there are times when John Kirby is as skilled in that briefing room as McCurry was, but without a doubt, on a daily basis, and anybody who's covered the White House for any length of time will tell you that.
Understood. Mine was Jen Psaki, but I haven't been covering the White House as long as you have, my friend. So, thank you so much.
I find her. Yeah,
I love her. I love her. She was my dream press secretary, and they actually nominated her, so I was very happy about that. Just Ask the Question. Get it wherever you get your podcasts and get that book. Really, really Free the Press. Really, really great book. Very important. So thank you so much. Look for him on salon.com. You can find him on probably every single social media site that's popped up in the last 6 months.
Yeah, I used to be able to pop one social media site, put my article up there, and that's it. Now I got to go to 5 different ones. Thank you, Elon, you moron. That's we had an international town square, and he blew it up for reasons he doesn't even know. He's like another guy flying by the seat of his pants and burning his ass.
Useful idiot. Useful idiot.
I don't know how useful, but I'll go with the idiot part.
Well, for the bad guys, he's useful. Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you today, Brian Karem.
Always a pleasure, Alex.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening to The Beans. I hope you have a great weekend. Tune into the Jack podcast this Sunday. I will be back in your ears Monday. Until then, please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, take care of the planet, take care of your mental health, vote blue over Q, and bring someone with you. I've been AG, and them's The Beans. The Daily Beans is written and executive produced by Allison Gill with additional research and reporting by Dana Goldberg. Sound design and editing is by Desiree McFarlane, with art and web design by Joelle Reeder with Moxie Design Studios. Music for The Daily Beans is written and performed by They Might Be Giants, and the show is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, please visit mswmedia.com.
MSW Media.
Hi, I'm Frances Callier.
And I'm Angela V. Shelton.
And we're Frangela.
You know what you need in your life? The Final Word podcast.
Yes, you do.
That's right. It is the final word on all things political and pop cultural.
Where we make real news real funny.
Where we inspire you so you can #resist.
Subscribe and get a new episode of the Final Word podcast each week. It's the news we think you need to hear.
That's right. We think you need to hear it. Okay?
Yeah, it's what we say so.
That's right. And because all we do is give, every Thursday you can listen to our hysterical podcast, Idiot of the Week.
We round up the stupid because you know what? Somebody has to.
Okay. All we do is give.
Hi, I'm Harry Littman, host of Talking Feds, a roundtable that brings together prominent figures from government law and journalism for a dynamic discussion of the most important topics of the day. Each Monday, I'm joined by a slate of Feds favorites and new voices to break down the headlines and give the insider's view of what's going on in Washington and beyond. Plus sidebars explaining important legal concepts read by your favorite celebrities. Find Talking Feds wherever you get your podcasts.